Welcome to Sandbox FOMO5 from Buro Happold. Each week we pick short snippets from our most recent episode for your listening pleasure. These quick listens could be valuable insights, thought-provoking elements, or even practical advice that will no doubt enrich your life and knowledge. Sandbox brings together curious individuals interested in a specific topic to discuss, dissect, and interrogate it. The style is conversational, with experts from Buro Happold and invited external guests who will add another angle to the narrative. Listeners are encouraged to gather around our podcast so that we can explore the latest advances in various fields and expand our collective horizons. Sometimes we'll tackle a subject head-on, sometimes a sideways view, but always with curiosity, expertise, and who knows, maybe even a dash of humour. Panel, or squad, as I shall call you today, when we're thinking about our Stadia, and this is a two-parter, what kind of additional community uses are we thinking of? What's possible? Also, as a second part then, how can we turn our Stadia then into flexible spaces for multiple uses? Let's go to Paul for this one, first of all. Let's kick off with you, Paul.
Okay, big question. I think there's sort of things that you could do as small interventions. If you look at a typical stadium, there's a lot of space. When you think about the field of play, maybe that's harder to use. The field of play is sacrosanct. It doesn't want to be damaged in any way, but the stadiums...
The grounds was not going to let you on there.
Exactly. The areas around under the terracing, there's often spaces where general concourse areas, which on a match day, people would be familiar with being able to go get your food and drink at halftime, go to the toilets. There's first aid facilities in there. Those spaces could relatively easily be used for street markets, food markets, low-key music events for local community, things that the community, they could open the doors and have the community use those spaces because the infrastructure, not touching on Colin too much, but there's the elements of the infrastructure are already there in place and wouldn't need a huge amount of interventions to the building fabric itself to implement. And it would be more of a security and ticketing question and conundrum to overcome. Then there's the bigger question of, could you use the terracing itself? Could you have theatre? Obviously, music is a typical one that we've seen implemented more and more in recent years, boxing, other non-specific football or rugby events.
Yeah.
The hospitality areas could be used as restaurants for non-match day relatively easily and using those spaces. And of course, we're in the built environment. There's clever things we can do that can make the building develop, change, be flexible to offer up a whole host of other opportunities with various expense if there was a market for it. But I think there's a lot of relatively small interventions that could be done to create more uses than just the match day.
Yeah, fantastic. We're going to have a look at some of those interventions, big and small, in a minute. But Colin, I'll just go to you and just say, when you think about the multiple uses and what a community might get out of a football stadium, before we get on to how we redesign them to meet that, what do you see? What do you imagine happening in a football stadium?
I guess you've got the parallels, which Paul touched on, particularly with music. Like Taylor Swift's recent Wembley events brought about £300 million worth of economy into the London economy. So there's the huge scale bits which can fit in when you've got a scale of seats like 92,000 seats. So on that one end, it can bring a lot in the entertainment sector. I think the other end is you've got space and amenities. So that stadium itself has its own internal infrastructure, catering, for example, changing rooms, equipment storage. It's got power, it's got heating. These are all these things that get used very rarely. There's a question about how much of that infrastructure could be used by the community on a day-to-day process. So rather than bringing money in, it's helping reduce costs of things within the community. I think that's an important thing to look at as a balance.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's a twin-pronged approach. And Rob, the same question to you, please, if you've got anything.
I think the points Paul and Colin made are really good points. But also, I think clubs are doing a lot of that already. Most of the bigger clubs we work with, they are used most days of the week, whether that's tours coming round, the community use that's been talked about there. I've a club recently and they had a whole load of school kids in for work experience type events, conferencing, those kind of things. Certainly the bigger stadia that we design, the non-match day use is a big part of the design. For instance, at Tottenham Stadium, there's a whole of the east side where we omitted some Collins Columns
Put
even.
me out.
Sorry, Colin. We omitted some columns to create a big banqueting and conferencing space. And again, obviously at Tottenham, there's the sliding pitch, so we can host NFL there and makes concert use easier. But then also part of the planning application, we've also made space, hasn't been built yet, an NHS sort of diagnostics facility in Lily White House, which is next door. There's actually a community college in there. I think a lot of this is being thought about, but I think what's interesting, and from Paul's provocation, is how could we scale that up? And I think particularly when you get to maybe lower league clubs, is there some kind of tie-up with local authority to provide maybe some funding to help a club build a facility, but within that then have things like GP surgery or knowledge centre? Because as Paul said, a lot of these spaces are just spaces most of the time when you haven't got the venue full up.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick dip into our last episode of Sandbox. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the show. You'll find Sandbox in all the usual places, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buro Happold's YouTube channel, and on the Buro Happold website. What's more, if you want to join the conversation on X, known as Twitter to its old friends, use the hashtag BHSandbox. We'd love to hear from you on any of the topics discussed.